back to the Breathe with Bri Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about sexual healing and healing from sexual trauma. I know this type of conversation can get kind of dense, so I'm just going to say a trigger warning right now because we are talking about sexual trauma and it needs to be talked about as many times as it needs to be talked about because it's so prevalent in everyone's community and it really doesn't have enough light. And if you are someone who has gone through and experienced sexual trauma and you don't have anybody to talk about it with, I can be that person with you. So, number one at the top of the list is realizing that it's not your fault. Like, that's just the number one thing, because I understand that sexual trauma can happen at any age. Some people it happens younger, some people it happens, as a teen, some people it happens in college, some people it happens in adulthood, some people it happens repeatedly throughout their life. There's so many spectrums of which this can happen, and I've also talked to people where they just normalized it, and they're like, it's normal to have some sticky situations where you didn't necessarily consent. And while it is normal, it is still very much so unacceptable. So just starting off at a base level, and I understand this is more so something to meditate on and something to just kind of remind yourself every time those guilty and shameful feelings come up. It's just that it's not your fault. You know what I'm saying? Our society is so used to victim blaming, and there's been just so many generations of victim blaming. So if you don't have the right person to talk about it with, and you try to open up to someone who has no clue or no capacity to hold that space for you, they might victim blame you, and that makes the situation 1,000 times worse. I remember when my first incident happened in college, and I tried to tell my friends, and they seemed like they were mad at me. And I know it was just kind of like the height of the moment, but still, the way most of my friends reacted, I ended up not being friends with them after a certain point, because it's such a huge and life-changing situation, and it's such a intense power dynamic. Like, usually that's just what it is someone trying to take a person's power away in whatever capacity, or someone feeling entitled to another person's body, and it's not the victim's fault. Also, just to continue on that conversation, if you're ever someone who is, talking to a friend and you're hearing them talk about sexual trauma and things like that, just hold space for them. I've had this conversation with so many people because my main incidents happened in college, and I've been open about it because it was such a extreme situation, and thankfully I was kind of aware. Like, those were like the Tumblr ages, Facebook ages. So on Tumblr, people were being pretty vulnerable about their experiences, and that's where I shared mine. And I also shared mine on YouTube, and I just saw like so many comments about with children and younger that were just like, you're my Shiro for talking about this, and like, save me. How do I get out of this situation? And especially when it comes down to like family dynamics where you don't have housing, if you decide to leave this situation, that's when things get extremely complicated. So at this point in time in my life, I feel like I'm in a much better place, but it really does take time, and it's really not something you can ignore, because as much as you try to just ignore it or suppress it, it shows itself in other ways. And sometimes by ultimately confronting our traumas, we can heal our bodies more than we know. I know a lot of people don't associate emotional trauma and psychological trauma with like physical pain and physical suffering and physical ailments. But there is such a deep connection there. And maybe if you are having some reproductive ailments, you could start by rewiring how you relate to your body. And that opens up a whole new connection where you can get healing. So if you have gone through any sexually traumatic situations, I would say the first step is to acknowledge it. Acknowledge it with yourself. Acknowledge it if you have people that you feel safe around. Maybe even making a video of yourself saying it just to rewatch it, like, or a voice note or anything. Like, sometimes it's just really powerful to hear our own voices say what's in our minds, because especially if it's something that you're just not telling people about, but it's like deeply affecting you, because obviously, you know, our wombs and our private parts are such an important place, and you can't just go through these type of situations where someone is touching you inappropriately or just, you know, making you feel uncomfortable and try to hide it just because it's a more shameful topic and there's no space for it. I mean, there's definitely no space to talk about these issues in like mass religions if you're just going to get shamed for it. And oftentimes, once again, it comes back to victim blaming, because, like, you know, when you talk about the Bible and they're talking about, you know what I'm saying, prostitutes and things like that, like, we're always just looking at women as some type of sexual object that, like, and I hear men talk like this about women all the time. It's just like, women are, or girls as well, because we sexualize girls and it's disgusting. So when humans in general, once again, because we are all getting this programming that women, girls, children are inherently sexual objects. So if they're wearing spaghetti string tank top, like I always used to get in trouble in high school for that. If you're wearing a skirt that's too short, you're inherently like sexualizing yourself, which is in fact not true. Like, I always think about tribes and how they barely wear clothes, and how like it is actually possible for us to exist and not just always sexualize women. So due to the normalization of women and girls just inherently being sexual objects, because we are all kind of raised into this system, we believe it ourselves. Like, maybe I didn't realize I was being too sexy that day. Maybe I didn't realize that I was giving him those vibes. Maybe I didn't realize, and it's really, it's not your fault. Like, and this is something that I've really struggled with around beauty, because I've heard people talk about why, I mean, you know, I've heard people talk about why certain women dress in baggy clothes, and I'm one of those women who like dresses in baggy clothes because I'd rather people not perceive my body. And like, especially living in New York, catcalling is on 10,000. So yeah, I wear the baggiest fucking clothes when I'm walking around, and I dress down and I try to look uglier in order to avoid attention. And at this point in my life, I'm realizing that, like, if I actually felt fucking safe, I would probably walk around looking as beautiful as possible. Like, it's so sad to think that I've unfortunately been inherently sexualized thus far, making me not want to go outside in clothes that fit me or show off my body, even though I love being naked. If I could, I would walk around in whatever all the time. But unfortunately, so many people have been programmed to see beings with boobs and wombs to be inherently sexual, and anything that you do is inherently sexual. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the over-sexualization of women is ultimately what leads to this type of dynamic where sexual trauma is just this fucking prevalent and nobody's talking about it because we're blaming the victims. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. So even on my end, as much as I've healed from my sexual trauma, clearly I'm still over here protecting myself every single day. Like, I don't really feel comfortable around men like that. And like, I haven't had any of those type of sexual situations in so long, but still it lives with me. It is a part of my story. It is of me now. And that's why I think it's always so important to have these type of conversations, because it's so normal, and that's so fucking unfortunate. But what we can do is just like normalize talking about it without shame, because I mean, the shame honestly just comes in at our programming. So if you were programmed by a mass religion, if you were programmed by a private school, if you were programmed by whatever norms that society has put out that says, oh no, but your shorts were too short and that's why he did what he did. Bodies are not inherently sexual. Just as animals can walk around without clothes on. Like, do you understand? Like, and that's the thing too, because I feel like in a way, like, women long to be able to be free enough to like wear what they want to wear and be safe in that. Like, I know sometimes when I'm in the woods on a hot day, I don't want to wear clothes, but society is not safe enough for that type of behavior. And like, women are demonized for that. And then like, okay, so I've had one situation. I've had plenty of these situations actually, but there's one particular situation where I was living in Brooklyn, and during that time, it was wintertime. In wintertime, I usually get really close to spirit. So I was like fasting and only drinking like alkaline water, and just like, but it was summertime, so it was hot, and we didn't have like AC like that. So we were walking around damn near naked in our Brooklyn apartment. And then this guy was flying his drone to our windows every night, and I caught him. And I was just like, wow, this sucks. Let's just like curse him out the next time we see him and chase him with a bat. But my one roommate, who clearly hasn't had enough enough situations with the police to know that the police don't really do anything, she was serious about calling the police. So we called the police, and the police came over and was like, wait, so you all didn't close your blinds? That man just sounds like an opportunist. And this is the type of situation and things that I'm talking about, because if a world has thus far just like been about men and how they feel, like, I always look at, like, recently, once again in the wintertime, I like to get inspiration from movies and just watch a bunch of different things just to open my mind and to see artwork and see how people show their perspectives. And it's like, men have always had a chance to like explore their fantasies and put that out into the world. Like, I don't think there's enough women fantasies out there. I don't think there's enough like worlds and universes built by women. Like, I love Steven Universe, if you've ever seen that show, but like, there's not enough worlds that have been visualized by women, and we haven't like had enough movies and imagery of like safe scenarios where we don't have to walk around in constant fear that our bodies will be taken advantage of. And because that has been such a normalized idea, and because back in the day they were more so blaming it on how you were dressed, or if you were single, or if you're, you know, drinking or smoking. And if our bodies are ours because we were born into these bodies, then what the fuck do you mean? And that's what I want to say. There's a lot of deprogramming that you will need to do when these situations come about, if they ever come about, or if you've already been through it. Half the work to healing from sexual trauma is deprogram yourself and understanding that, oh shit, like probably some of my ancestors went through this as well. Probably, you know what I'm saying? Maybe my parents went through it and they just never talked about it because they never felt safe about it. Like, when I tried to talk about this stuff with my mom, she was like, well, you know, men can be like that sometimes. And it's like, the fuck? And here's the thing too, because when you actually are able to be with a person who respects your consent, because I know at a point in time before consent was like even a word that was talked about a lot, like people didn't see asking for consent as sexy And people expected men to just act. And that was the norm, without asking, without talking about things. And consent is sexy. Consent is like one of the sexiest things, because like it shows patience and it shows intention. And quite frankly, what I've noticed about any sexual experience is if you can at least like communicate what you like or what you want, like that's gonna, you know, if whoever you're having sex with can fucking take directions and listen, it's gonna be a better experience. So like this whole notion thus far that consent hasn't been sexy, or consent is just not what they do, or it kills the vibe or ruins the mood, it's just malarkey. It's some bullshit. It like, that doesn't make sense, because in any other scenario where you're touching someone's body, you would be signing some forms, right? Like you go to the doctor's office, you sign some forms to give them consent to do work on your body. You get a tattoo, they sign some forms to touch your body. That's consent. And it is a very normal thing that needs to be adjusted. And let me tell you, if you've never had a relationship where you've gotten that space to consent to certain things, then you know what I'm saying? Take some time, do some reflecting, so you could call in someone who actually is patient and wants you to be totally comfortable. Because at the end of the day, sex is only going to be good if you're comfortable. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm saying. When I talk to a lot of people, like they've never even been comfortable in the act ever before, because they've never had that time in that space. And that's really unfortunate. And I think sex really gets a bad rap because there's so much convolution in there, and there's so much judgment in there, and only men have been able to make up these dynamics, and we haven't created enough safety nets and enough safe sex rhetoric and enough exploration of this topic. But I'm going to go back to sexual trauma. So once again, I really just want to reiterate that it's not something you could just stuff down, because it will come out in depression, and it will come out in each and every relationship, because like, I mean, touch is like, it affects your trust. If somebody is touching you without consent and continuing that whole process, irregardless of if you were coherent or not, your body is being touched inappropriately without your consent, and that trauma sets in, and it turns into depression, and it turns into acting out, and it turns into like hating men and other people that didn't even do it to you. And then that's just like projecting shit everywhere. And the more you can like come to terms with it, which what I'm saying is it's gonna take time. I've written out how I felt so many times. I've cried about it so many times. I've screamed about it. I've yelled about it. I've wished that I didn't remember. I've wished that these thoughts didn't pop up in my mind at random times. I wish that I wasn't so confused when I've wanted to intimacy with someone, but then these feelings of past traumas are coming up, and it's convoluting the moment that I'm in now. And also something that I think is important is also talking about it with your partner, because talking about it with your new partner, because if you can't bring up these type of situations and that person doesn't respond in the best way, like if they say, oh, well, what were you doing? Or, you know, if they try to victim blame you, then that's a key factor that you need to get the fuck up out of there, because they have some of the same morals. And that's the thing, like, so many men get by with just not expressing themselves, even though they could have, like, you know what I'm saying? As a person who just had a baby with someone who's simply just a friendly guy, it does not mean his internal morals are good at all. He's just not saying it. He's just not acting as vulgar as other men, but he still abides by certain toxic masculine codes. And that's what I'm saying. That's why this topic is so important, because like when I went through my sexual trauma and then I tried to talk about it with a partner after that, and my partner was talking about my sister went through that, but she shouldn't have put herself in that situation. Like that relationship was over after that, for real. But I was younger at that time, so I just enjoyed debating and trying to get people to, think like me. But at this age, I'm not debating with nobody about rape. Okay, you either get it or you don't get it. And if you don't get it, I'm moving the fuck on, because there are a lot of information in this age. So if you really wanted to educate yourself on this, you can. And also, once again, that's something else I did that was very helpful, is find support groups. I had my situations in college, so thankfully my college actually had like a rape awareness day or like support group, and the room was filled with women, and everybody was sharing their stories, and it was wild to have an auditorium full of women who have had the same experience. And that's why after that, I'm just like, what the fuck? Why are we all walking around with this? It's dense, it's heavy, it's affecting our wounds, it's affecting our mental health. Like, it's not something we need to carry. So yeah, like I guess what I'm really trying to say is it's really going to take time, but I can give you some steps to help you out. But like, it really takes time. And also too, with like all this promotion of betterhelp.com, which I've tried that and it fucking sucks. And I've heard so many other people who say they've had horrible experiences with that. So I just want to say, if you are a person that's trying to communicate your sexual trauma to a therapist and they are invalidating you or trying to victim blame you, get a new therapist. When you go through sexual trauma, it's not the time to talk to people who are entrenched in old world thoughts. You know what I'm saying? Because they're always going to normalize the man's perspective. They're always going to normalize, oh, well, what were you doing? How are you doing it? What did you didn't see the signs? Like, what? It shouldn't be happening, period. It shouldn't be happening. Nobody should be touching me unless I give you consent to touch me. Nobody should be looking at me in sexual, disgusting ways. Nobody should be catcalling to me unless I give you permission to talk in my direction. Like, period. So, like, that's what I really want to say, because I'm like, if you talk to the wrong person, you're just going to feel more shame. And it's like you already carrying enough shame, and you talk to somebody that has no clue, or, you know what I'm saying? That's lived in a box, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, it invalidates you. So then you carry more shame because you just tried to open up about a situation that was deeply harmful. I mean, in college, I remember once again telling another friend, like the next day after some crazy shit happened, and she's like, oh, well, I talked to him and he said he didn't do it. And I'm supposed to be your good friend. Of course he's going to say he didn't do it. And that's what I'm saying. We got to stop talking to people who invalidate us, because when you experience sexual trauma, now is not the time. You really need somebody that's validating you or listening to you. So if you don't have that person, I am happy to be that person. Once again, I have plenty of sessions on my website where we can really just talk it through. Okay? I'm not a therapist, but I could be a validator. I could be a witness. You know what I'm saying? And that amounts to a lot. I can hold space for the depths of your sorrows, because it's nothing that you should hold yourself. Technically, if we were, a healthy society, we would have communities of women to talk about this stuff with anywhere. It wouldn't be a quote unquote new age idea to sit in a circle under a moon and talk about our trauma so we can release it into the fire, into the air, and transmute it. And technically speaking, if we were a healthy society, this wouldn't be happening. I think the older generations love to call us too sensitive and things like that. But technically, with anything, we're making this world a safer place by opening up and talking about what's inappropriate. Because back in the day, they didn't have the space to bring it up. That was normal. Like, you get married, you're someone's property. So what are you talking about? You were touched inappropriately and you didn't get a say so in it. What are you talking about? So that's what I'm saying. We need to shift the perspective, but that comes with a lot of programming. Also too, like, there's so much anger and rage that one feels after being in a sexually traumatic situation, and that anger and rage and disappointment is so valid. And once again, I'm always gonna talk about writing things down in your journal exactly the way you feel them, cursing out whoever you need to curse out, like putting curses on people, just like, you know, just like not real curses, but maybe you feel the need to, or banishing people from your life. Like, you need to write it down, let it out, scream it out, yell it out. If you need to go drive your car and scream for 45 minutes the whole time, let your throat chakra let out some of that pent up rage and pent up energy. Because once again, it's a process. Like, and that's the thing with trauma. It just kind of, if you aren't processing it, it's going to keep resurfacing in your mind. And something like sexual trauma, and especially when you want to be in relationships with other people and new people and healthier dynamics, if you're coming in there with a bag full of shame that you're just trying to suppress, it's going to show up at some point. And that's why it's important to just talk it out, dance it out, you know, do some rituals, write it down, burn it. There's so many things you can do, but like, it'll take time. I do feel like one of the best things is just talking about it with the right people, or just sharing, because that's what makes secrets so heavy and so shameful, is because it's something that you have to keep down and you can't talk about because you know people will judge you. And I'm just hoping that there are so many more spaces. Like, I would definitely say to Google support groups for sexual trauma, or support groups for your specific trauma, because it's like, talking in therapy is nice, but I don't always like the one-sidedness of it, where it just seems like I have a problem and the other person doesn't have problems. It feels more validating for me to be able to talk about my problems with other people who have problems and see all the similarities. Like, that's why I've always been such a fan of like sister circles and like full moon circles, because we all get to share what we've been going through this moon cycle, and you see the similarities. Biggest problem with separation consciousness is we think that we're all individuals going through an individual experience, when literally this is a generational experience, and some of us were meant to go through it this lifetime so we could speak the fuck up and stop it from happening, and make sure it don't happen to our kids, and make sure we have a safe enough space to communicate that, and even make space for our children. Like, are you kidding? I know for a fact with my child, I just want to create space for us to even have that conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because I definitely didn't feel comfortable coming to my parents about it. Actually, my stepdad was the main person who was like, well, it's not your fault. So just, you know what I'm saying? You're going to have to cry it out. I'm sorry that happened to you, but like, it's not your fault. While everyone else was saying, well, what happened? And like, are you sure? And none of that shit matters. And it's like, you're already saying it to yourself. When you go through certain sexually traumatic situations, you're already like invalidating yourself, because that's what society showed you. You're like, did that really happen? Am I making this up? What happened? Who knows? All in all, it is a situation that has taken from your power in a way that you can't even explain, probably find the words for in certain moments, but you know it's affecting you emotionally, you know it's affecting you mentally, you know you can't just go to the grocery store anymore or be happy or laugh like you used to, because something has deeply impacted you. But unfortunately, because it's a taboo topic to talk about, and there's not enough spaces to talk about it, and so many people don't even feel comfortable with their own sexuality, that there's just, where do you talk about this at? Like, what do you mean church is supposed to be a healing space, but we can't talk about the deep trauma that impacts our communities, which is sexual trauma? We cannot just call this shit a sin. We cannot just say you're safe in marriage, because if men don't even have the mindset of consent, you're not safe. There's nothing safe about that. That's what I'm saying. Every time someone has the discussion or the debate about like no other mammal in nature dates their natural born predator, heterosexuality is such a mind warping thing, because technically speaking, if women were being so fucking serious, the main people who have taken away from our success and our expansion thus far in the name of history has been men. Whether they take it away through sexual trauma, whether they take it away through laws preventing us from having sex, preventing us from having abortions, whether they take it away from preventing us from reading, preventing us from so many things. Like, there's no other force that has ripped away our power in so many different ways. And that's the paradox of like being a woman in general, is having so much power. But thus far in society, people have told you that you are emotional, so therefore that means you don't have strength. When literally women are the intuitive force. Like, where would we be without women? Like, that's why we create, or that's why men have created these Bibles and things like we're coming from the rib cage of men and all that other bullshit. Like, women hold the power. Hence why we have the power to sexually entice people. That is a fucking power. We have the power to persuade people. We have the power to repel people. Also, if you're an introvert, or you're somebody who's quiet or shy and you've gone through a sexually traumatic situation, I must say it is such a wake-up call to use your voice, because once that happens, all you want to do is fucking scream. All you want to do is fucking rage the fuck out. And it might be new for you because you've been in such a more calmer state until your power was taken away in certain areas, and let that be the fuel to your fire. You know what I'm saying? Like, we were taught that, like, angry black woman, you don't want to be an angry black woman, or you don't want to be an angry woman in general. You don't want to be a Karen. You don't want to be a bitch. But like, in reality, if our power has been taken away thus far from so many different fucking places, of course we'd be angry. Of course we're angry. This is the part of our existence as a whole where we actually put words to the fire. We have every right to be angry. Back to the topic. I just want to say what has helped me the most, I guess, is deprogramming myself. Because if you got a bunch of sheep ass people in your life and you're trying to have a real ass conversation about something that has hurt you and affected you, but everyone in your life is following the rules as if nothing is going on, I mean, then you can't have those conversations with them, because it's only going to make you feel shittier. Or if you're just the black sheep and you're just having them anyway, make people feel uncomfortable. Who cares? Who cares? Because let me tell you, when you are walking in your power and you're able to own your shit and be like, oh, okay, so I've went through this situation before. It was deeply impactful. It's been years. It's been years of doing the work to try to make myself feel comfortable in my own body again. And who cares if you're uncomfortable with this conversation? Because the fact of the matter is, it happens so much. Children get their power taken away all the time. Children get their childhood taken away all the time. And it's just so fucking normalized. And unless we shout it to the fucking ethers and hold these people accountable and point these fingers and cancel motherfuckers who need to be canceled, because obviously 9 times out of fucking 10, if you were raped by one person, that person has done it to plenty of people. So as we continue to like shame women and like, why would you say that? That person is such a insert whatever acclaimed figure. Who the fuck cares? Because they're out here stealing women's power. And that's not how we're working anymore. That's not how we're going anymore. It's not the time to keep it a secret. It's not the time to keep it to yourself and let it eat at you and let it take you apart. It's a time to speak about it and talk about it with people, because you never know who has gone through it. It's so fucking normal. And there's so many women who don't even realize they've gone through it. They're just like, oh, I guess it was just a rough guy, or he just wasn't listening, or he was just drunk and I didn't know. It's still unacceptable. It still shouldn't have happened to you. It still deeply affects your psyche. It still deeply affects your physical body. And maybe this could just be, something that inspires you to take your healing deeper more so. Because maybe this isn't the podcast that gives you like a step-by-step guidance to fixing your life. But I mean, there is no step-by-step thing, and that's what we need to understand. Everything is specific and personal to you. I could get my healing by bathing in the ocean like 7 days a week and washing that shit away. I could get my healing through rituals, but you could get your healing through therapy. You could get your healing through talking to a pastor. You know what I'm saying? It's different things for different people. If you know what works for you, then, you know, go ahead. But I'm just encouraging you to not try to downplay it or suppress it, because it will come out in other ways. I mean, especially as like sex is such a beautiful and wonderful thing, like, because it's been so perverted and just demonized, and it's sinful, and now it's secretive and all these other things. That's the thing. Sex is just inherently a confusing topic to hold in this type of society. So if we don't even know how to have a comfortable and or safe conversation about sex in general, then how can we even have these conversations about when sex is inappropriate? And to be really honest and intentional, what I want for my womb holders out there is to be free. I want us to be able to live in a world where we can just let our titties out and our pussies out, because vaginas need air, first of all. I think we're always having these conversations about vagina smells, even though vagina smells vary. But one thing that I don't think I was ever taught until I just listened to my own body was like, vaginas don't need to be in panties all the time. Vaginas need air. So, hey, you should be walking around in a skirt without your panties on. Giving your vagina some air. Giving your vagina some freedom. That could help you heal. Let the sun be on your vagina. That could help you heal. But like, I just want to get us away from these notions that we need to be dressing a certain way, looking a certain way, acting a certain way to deserve a certain type of respect, because that type of narrative is always going to just present some type of hierarchical status. And that's what I'm saying. There's so many things. So like I think people inherently, and also because historically we've always kind of functioned in a hierarchy type of way, like the black community for real, because it's like, are you a hoe, or are you a working woman, or are you a submissive one? And all that rhetoric is kind of unimportant, because what I want to do is I want to see my sisters free. I want to see them free from the shackles of men. I want to see them happy. I want to see them joyful. I want to see them be able to express themselves as freely as fucking possible, because I know that will move us in a direction that we're supposed to be moving in. We no longer have the capacity to hold on to these shameful stories and lug them around with us as it deteriorates our health and continues to cycle down to our children. Like, let's free ourselves and free our generations and free our ancestors as we name these traumas. Like, naming the traumas and then actively working to hold the people accountable if they are still in your life. If that's not the route you want to go, cool too. But just like, you have to name it and you can't suppress it. I know some people are better at suppressing than others, but it always shows up in different ways. There's no such thing as being perfect. And just because you've had the sexual trauma does not inherently mean you're imperfect. Obviously, sexual trauma is not something that is worn like a badge. Like, you can present in ways like you're a fucking virgin. And who cares? Because you know. And that's what matters. Like, if it's something that's eating you up inside and something that's begging to be felt and experienced again, just give yourself that space. Like, so often we're so uncomfortable about like even crying on our own. Like, I see so many people who have so much conviction around crying, dependent on how you were received as a child, right? Or how you were received in your relationships if you cried. And if you can't even cry and you can't even break down like by yourself, then there's probably a bunch of shit you're holding on to, for real. Because it needs to come out. Like, society has told us that we get an award for being the most toughest capitalistic abiding citizen, but you really don't. Your award is literally sickness. And then you go to a healthcare system that doesn't give a fuck about you. And I wouldn't say that's an award. So if you want to have a chance of, having amazing sexual experiences, if not just being comfortable in your own sexuality, being able to be yourself and express yourself as you desire, you have to confront your inner demons. And if those inner demons are sexual trauma, you got to name it. You got to sit with it. You got to cry about it. You got to rage about it, talk about it, yell about it, like get it out, because it is begging you to come out. Once again, too, like I've said before, I have sessions available. I have sessions for rage, sessions for grief, sessions for radical acceptance. So if you ever want to book a session with me, I am always here to hold space for you in your darkness. I'm here to hold space for you in your light. I am here to hold space for you in your anger. And I know that's not something that is common. So I'm just putting it out there and starting the conversation that you don't have to carry around the shame with you if you've been sexually traumatized. It doesn't have to be your center of pain for the rest of your life, because as you open up and express yourself and create from these wounds, you will heal. And it's a process, and it's going to take time. But once you get to the part where you're feeling so much better, you just better. And so all you can do is look back and know that, you want to help other people heal, because you don't have to hold on to this. It doesn't have to be the end of your life. It doesn't have to be the end of your happiness.